and I intentionally shouted that without the microphone on. So now with the microphone, ladies and gentlemen, let us get started. So I would welcome all of you to workshop 34 on standards for sustainable digital music. I will give a brief introduction of the topic and the particular part of the topic that I would like us to try to focus on most in a few minutes, but I would like us to start with each of our panelists just giving a very brief self-introduction so that we know who is actually here. So maybe we start with you.
Thank you, Norbert. Good morning. My name is Beatriz Busaniche. I'm from Argentina. I am a professor at the University of Buenos Aires. I'm also the public leader of Creative Commons in Argentina. I am a member of Via Libre Foundation, which is a free software organization based in Córdoba in Argentina.
My name is David Hughes. I head the technology department at the Recording Industry Association of America. It's the trade organization that represents the major recorded music companies, Sony Music, Warner Music, Universal Music, and so on. I don't know what else to say, but I've been in the digital music space since before there was one. I started working on digital distribution of music on the internet in about 1996. And so I've seen a lot of changes and a lot of problems, but one of the areas that I concentrate on now is metadata and technical standards surrounding metadata. So hopefully I can contribute something today.
So I'm Jim Beveridge. I'm from Microsoft. I'm based in London. I spend a lot of my time in Brussels for my sins. I deal with a range of technology policy issues. Media is one of these technology policy issues. I'm on the steering board of the Digital Video Broadcasting Standards Organization, and I'm also chairman of a group called the Digital Interoperability Forum that looks at interoperability between different TV and video standards.
My name is Norbert Polo. I'm from the Swiss Open Systems User Group, which is mainly about open source software, but we are also looking into things like open data, keeping the internet open, open standards, that kind of thing.
Jens Karklinch, I'm from UNESCO, and we're doing more or less the same what Norbert just said, looking into open systems, open education resource, open access to scientific information. That is the one part of UNESCO's activities in this area.
And my name is Gillian York. I'm the Director for International Freedom of Expression at the Electronic Frontier Foundation. I am probably the only panelist here that actually does not really work on IP issues at all. But I guess for what I can throw in, I am a Creative Commons member and a believer in sharing.
No, you're not alone.
No.
UNESCO is not dealing with IP.
Okay, good.
We also have an empty chair here, which I hope will soon be filled by Amelia of the Pirate Party and member of the European Parliament. And then we also, maybe, if technical stuff is working, we have one or two remote panelists. So maybe our remote moderator can say quickly if they are here. So they are not here yet. But if they are here, I have given our remote moderator authority to interrupt me and anyone else just to absolutely make sure we do anything we can to get the remote people integrated into the conversation, because we really need to get them integrated more. You wanted to say something? Okay, thank you. So let me quickly introduce the topic that I would love us to focus the discussion on, because I feel that there is a lot of debate happening on one aspect of the digital music and digital culture ecosystem, and too little attention to something that could also be very helpful to work on. I'm going to declare questions like, should there be copyright law, should there not be copyright law, completely off topic. It's not what we are going to talk about. If somebody should say more than 3 sentences about that, I will consider it my job to just interrupt them. What I would like us to talk about is metadata, and in particular the kind of metadata that specifically helps to create a viable, sustainable ecosystem. One idea that I'm trying to throw out is, why don't we associate with each music file that may get distributed legally or illegal, that's not the topic right now, over the internet, associate with that music file a link to the website of the artist. And then people who like that music, they can click on that link and see the concepts of the website, merchandise articles he may offer to sell, and that could allow the artist to actually have some income in a way which is independent of the idea to buy music as in terms of licensing under copyright law. So I would like us to try to think about, talk about what we could do to empower that kind of thing. That is an issue for standardization to some extent. It's an issue also for implementing it in music players. Well, not all of them. If they look like this, a link is not going to help. But if you have a music player which is a piece of software on a computer that has an actual screen that can display a website, I would like to see a standard say in its conformance clause, in order to conform to this standard, the music player has to display the link prominently so that you can just click it and get to the website of the artist. There's also, when we start opening this can of worms of metadata, obviously there's going to be lots of other ideas for metadata also, like perhaps an identification number associated with each piece of music, so that it's easy to determine what you have, and so on. So that is also welcome for discussion. So I would like to give our panelists, each of them 5 minutes, to introduce a viewpoint in this area, and then we will try to have a very open and frank and constructive discussion, and I will very much try to involve all of you who are here or who may be joining us remotely. So please be ready when we are finished with the round through the panel. Be ready to jump in and make your interventions. So right now I give the word to Beatrice to start us off. Welcome.
Thank you, Norbert. Well, first I have to say that I'm not an expert on metadata or any other technical stuff, so I will try to focus a little bit more on my experience working with the independent music scene in Argentina. I have to say that this idea of putting this kind of link from the audience to the musician directly brings to the table the role of the intermediaries there, the music industry, the marketing around the musician. So I think we have to focus on how could we build a different business model that could certainly fit on this sharing environment. There's something we have to recognize now, is that sharing is something that it's going to happen. It is happening. Whatever idea comes to the table to stop it, the war against file sharing is lost for the industry. There's no way to stop people from sharing things on the internet, unless they completely control internet and set an environment which we certainly don't want on behalf of other rights like freedom of expression, like privacy, and so on. So I think after having accepted that people will share what they have, we have to try to find different business models for musicians or for the people who actually wants to make a living from their artistic productions. And I can tell from my experience in Argentina that one of the main barriers for this kind of discussions is exactly those people who still think that they will keep selling copies like if they were material things. In Argentina, in our experience, the ones who are blocking this debate on the emergence of new business models are, for example, and I can say it for my own experience, the collecting societies. The collecting societies who represent the authors are some of the most active organizations against these new kind of models. And I can talk about an experience. For example, there is a very, very famous website in Latin America. It is from Argentina, but it's very, very famous in the whole Latin America and in the Spanish-speaking countries. It is called Taringa. And it is like our Pirate Bay case in Argentina. They've been sued. They are now in court, and there is a long time prosecution against them. But they are very popular. They have around 6 or 7 million visits each day. They have around 20 million people subscribe to their website, and they are now developing something they call Taringa Música, so Taringa Music. There is a special portal for music, and they are exploring a new business model. And they, for doing so, they had to try an agreement with the collecting societies, and the collecting societies blocked that agreement because Taringa denied them the right to block the contents they wanted to be blocked. So they said, okay, we will sign something with you just if you let us block whatever content we want from your portal. And they said, no, that's not. And so in our experience, we have to be honest and start thinking new models and start thinking different ways. And this metadata idea is really a good one between others. And I think we need to go back to the debate, even while Norbert said this is not a debate here, but we need to know what kind of copyright do we want. And as a reference to the background paper for this table, I would like to remember that in the International Covenant on Economic and Social and Cultural Rights, there is an article, the Article 15, which is in the background paper here, that recognized the three rights: the right to take part in the cultural life, the right to enjoy the benefits of the cultural and the scientific progress and its application, and the benefit from the protection of the moral and material interests resulting from any scientific literary, so which we could call the author's rights here. But in this covenant, the application committee already said that this Article 15C is not necessarily the kind of copyright we have now. It's not necessarily this one. It could be something else. It could be a direct pay from the audience to the artist. It could be another kind of recognition of their work that could not necessarily be this copyright we know now. So I think we have to think about different models like this one that Norbert proposed, but I think the main barrier here are the old players of this game. In Argentina, specifically the collecting societies who are blocking every new business initiative that they can't control. So I think we have to start by thinking about a new model for representing the authors, and what is the role of the intermediaries in all this business. So I think this kind of ideas will progress but if we can think about all the players in the game, and the all players stops blocking these kind of initiatives. I think that is the main problem. Thank you.
Thank you. Next on my list is Lee McKnight, professor at Syracuse University. Is he online? Okay, so we hope he may be able to join later. Then I give the word to David.
Thank you, Norbert. Okay, so I have many points that I would like to make. I don't really agree with Beatrice's point about the inevitability of the free flow of copyrighted content. I think it sounds to me kind of some kind of technological determinism or something, and I have a problem with that. In the past, there were a number of industries that were told that this is the way it is, it's never going to change, live with it. And in many cases, the cable TV business and the satellite business, in the United States, there was a time when 69% of households in America did not pay for their cable TV because it was so easy to hack around the boxes and so on. And technological solutions were implemented, and it became a viable business model. In the case of what we're talking about here, I understand the value, and I will go into the metadata, and there's value there. But I don't think, from my point of view, that it has to be given that people are going to continue to share the way they are. I think that in civil society, we have rules, we have copyright laws and other laws. I think the internet has shaken things up. I think it may take a long time for laws to catch up. So we're in a period of flux right now. Having said that, to go back to Norbert's point about using metadata to create sustainable businesses. It's a little bit tough. I'll give one analogy. In the motion picture industry, when the trailer for a movie is freely distributed and people see the trailer, they then go to the movie theater to watch the movie, hopefully, or pay for it in some form, physical or digital stream, ultraviolet, whatever it is. In the case of music, the marketing product is the song, and the end product is the recording in our business. So that business of using our music to advertise our music doesn't work, because the file that people will get through free sharing, for example, is identical to the file that's being sold by the retailer. So that leads us to, well, is there some way that we can then build another business? And I understand if you link to an artist website, as you said. I mean, I would not implement it that way. I would never go to the artist website. I would use something like the handle system that's easily redirectable, because things change, rights holders change, artists' priorities change, whatever. But once you've done that, there is an opportunity, if the artist is one of the few artists that does tour and do concerts, because many artists do not. You could sell tickets for that, or maybe they're going to appear on TV or something else. There's a small number of artists who the vast majority of their revenue is not from their recordings. So, for example, I'll give you an example of Beyonce. Beyonce's second album is a better example. She probably sold in the United States 2 or 3 million copies, and she probably made a few $1 million from that over the course of years. Let's say she made $3 million over the course of years from her second album, which was a very successful multi-platinum album. She can go into a photograph studio for one day, take photographs for Maybelline, and get $5 million. And then she can release her clothing line and get $10 million. And if you're Dr. Dre, you can sell your headphones and get tens of millions of dollars. So for the few artists that can use the music as a promotional tool to sell something else, I think that this metadata idea is good. My experience, having spent my whole career in the music industry, is that the percentage of artists to which this would apply successfully is less than 10%. maybe 5% of the artists could really make a good, profitable living by using the music to promote some other thing. Because most artists don't even make money from touring and concerts. Their concert tours are subsidized by the record company. Only the big names that you think of, Madonna, U2, and so on, Rolling Stones, make money, a lot of money from touring. So it's an idea. It could be successful for a small number of artists, but anyway. I have some ideas about the metadata and the pros and cons of that, but maybe we can save that for later in the discussion.
So I invite Jim.
Yeah, so thank you, Norbert. So I just want to say, I think there is a, as Dave was saying, there is a burgeoning demand for more information about the artists that count as a small percentage of artists. Metadata is one of the things ways whereby you can access information. I also say that coming from a technology standpoint, there's a lot of information now being able to be captured when the music's made, or when the movie's made, or when the television program's made. And as time goes on, the richness in that environment will make it more and more valuable through time, because people don't just want to listen to the song, they don't just necessarily want to look at the movie, they want to understand about the people in the movie, they want to understand where the movie was made, the location. And it's kind of interesting, I've been dealing quite a bit with the consortia that's called Ultraviolet Consortia, and they've been looking at the ways whereby you can share content, but share content in a way that it supports the business models from the different providers. And there's no one business model that works. There's a number of different business models that are possible. And the way that works is they've been looking at the transition, the Hollywood studios have been looking at the transition from the DVD, where everybody went out and they bought the DVD, and you played the DVD in every player. And as the industry moves away from the fixed content, the DVD, towards more of the digital content, they've been looking at ways whereby they can make the systems interoperable with competing movie studios. And they've come and defined a number of different technical standards which allow content to be shared within members of the family, and allow content to be shared across a number of different devices, so you're no longer locked into a device. So for example, if you've got a movie and you want to play it back in your Xbox, that's fine. If you want to have the same movie and play it back in your PlayStation, that's also good. And the same goes for your cable box or whatever other mechanism you have. So they've defined, and I think this is one of the things you need to be careful of, because technology is moving at such a rate, then you need to take into account that these moves in technology are allowing sharing and interoperability in a way that's never been defined before. And it doesn't really matter whether it's a movie or whether it's a digital file of somewhat. And if you apply these techniques to this type of content, you can find a very rich environment taking place. So the two things in terms of technology that were defined were a common encryption algorithm that works across a number of digital rights mechanisms, and a way to stream the music or the movies smoothly across a number of different devices. And they want one other little additional thing that comes into the play is that there's a rights locker. So if you buy a piece of content, that piece of content is in the rights locker. That rights locker remembers that you've actually bought that content, and then says you can then stream that to a number of different devices in your house. So it doesn't matter which device you're streaming it to. So I think technology is moving ahead, and some of these techniques should be carefully looked at.
Thank you. So just summarizing quickly, we have heard from the three movers and shakers in this whole debate. We have heard from the free culture movement, we have heard from the music industry, we have heard from the software industry, and now I want to just some input into this whole debate from perspectives which are also very important and sometimes overlooked. And so please, Yanis, give me the UNESCO perspective, please.
So thank you. I'm not sure that I can give UNESCO perspective on your specific question, what you asked, whether putting tag on each piece of music, which would lead to artist's website would be useful or not. Honestly, I cannot pronounce on that. But what I can say that from UNESCO's perspective, the organization which stands for promotion of cultural diversity, Internet as a tool provides a fabulous opportunity of sharing culture across the borders, across continents. And we certainly are very much in favor of finding the right and legal ways of sharing cultural heritage and cultural experiences all across the world. Being a representative of a treaty organization, I would not go in the debate whether intellectual property laws are good or bad. They are laws which are agreed. This is an international treaties. Governments have signed up for that. Industries are following and lobbying those treaties. What I would see as a maybe next step is promoting the new philosophy of knowledge sharing rather than knowledge hiding, but within the existing framework of within the existing legal framework. And I'm referring to open licensing practices, which seems to me getting more and more traction in the world, which allows sharing the knowledge on a voluntary basis by each author allows sharing the piece of intellectual property they have, or piece they have created, which is protected by the intellectual property regime under Creative Commons or any other existing open license. I think that for the moment this is the way to explore how the knowledge could be shared, and we are working in the direction, not specifically on music, but more on open education resources for sharing of education resources, particularly those which have been developed by using public funds, as well as promoting open access to scientific information, as well to all scientific information, results of research, but specifically to those which have been done by using public funds. And there is another area of our preoccupation. In 2003, UNESCO adopted the Charter on Preservation of Digital Heritage. And in 2009, when we did the review of the implementation of provisions of the Charter, we came to a very clear conclusion that in the field of long-term accessibility to information, including audiovisual information, our experiences and knowledge are really lagging behind the technological developments, and we need to collectively put together our efforts in developing the sustainable system of long-term preservation of digital information, which would clearly apply also to audiovisual. So that would be maybe my input, maybe very indirect to this subject of this debate. And I apologize, I have obligations in other workshops, so I will be leaving the room right now.
Thank you very much, and I believe we have someone from UNESCO to pick up the baton so that the debate can continue. Now I invite Jillian to give us a perspective that I think should be absolutely obligatory to consider in every standardization discussion. Please go ahead.
Thank you. So, as I mentioned at the beginning, I don't actually work on IP. I work on freedom of expression, which I think, although my organization does work on IP. And so I think that gives me a perspective from sort of both sides, as a user, sometimes a creator of content, writing, not music, and and an expert on freedom of expression. And so I've been listening, and I think that, you know, it's interesting, particularly to hear the conflict between, sorry, I'm making sure I know everyone's names, and I'm not sure I do, between Beatrice and David, specifically on the point that there's no way to stop sharing. Now, I don't know that that's necessarily true, but what I do know is that my generation, I would say, you know, the sort of digital natives, have kind of taken a different approach to the way they buy and use and share music. And I'm personally someone who pays for music, but I can tell you that back when CDs were prominent and MP3s were not, I didn't pay for music. I burned CDs, I copied cassette tapes, I recorded off the radio, and the only reason that I've started to buy music as an adult is not because of the legality of it, but because it's become easy. It's become very easy for me to buy just one song off an album if I only like that one song, etc., etc. And so I like this idea of linking to an artist's website, but I recognize, as David said, that this won't work for everyone. And so the problem is, how do we solve this problem, this sharing problem, without overreaching and stepping on freedom of expression, which I think, in my opinion, a lot of the bills that have come up globally in France, in the United States, and internationally have gone too far in their efforts to protect copyright. And so I have to say I'm not sure what the answer is. I read the paper. I don't think that this is a bad idea at all, but after hearing what David said, I understand how it would not work for every artist. And so I think just the perspective that I'm coming from is, how do we create a system that not only supports the artist, but also supports the supporting artists in his or her forget the word I'm trying to think of, but you know, the songwriter, the producer, etc. How do we create a system that supports all of them without without having these overreaching bills that would essentially prevent us not only from sharing files, but in some cases also from using other technologies, from innovating, and from accessing certain websites. And so I guess all I can say is I'm not sure of the answer, so it's difficult to be up in this position.
Thank you. I have a feeling that some of our panelists would very much like to respond to each other. But before we go to that, I would like the people in the room here who have not yet a chance to say something. Is there somebody who would like to make an intervention or ask a question, whatever? We do have two microphones, one on the left and one on the right. So I would welcome you at any point of the discussion to just go to one of those microphones, and then we will know that you have something of value that you want to say. So now I invite the panelists to maybe react to what has been said. Beatrice, do you have something that you want to add in reaction?
Yes. Well, obviously I don't share his point of view, and I don't share the idea of that my comment was some kind of technological determinism or something like that. I don't remember exactly what you said, but I think it's more a social issue. It's like in Latin America, the idea of buying culture is not only related to if it is legal or not, but if I can afford it or not, and that is a main question. It's not. I've never seen that that if something is legal or not stopped anyone from getting something from the internet. That is not the question when you are on the internet. It's how easy it is to buy, like Julian said, and sometimes, for example, in the case of ebooks, it's easier to get the PDF for free than to buy something in a ebook store. At least in Latin America, where the payment systems are not as developed as in Europe, not everybody has a credit card, which is, of course, needed to buy online. And not everybody feels safe by giving their credit card number to a website. And when you just with one click get a song or get a book or whatever, then that is the option. It's like obvious. It's easier to get the content on an illegal way. So if the industry wants us to comply with the law, the first step is to facilitate that. It's easier to get the illegal version. And it's not only a matter of law, it's a matter of what you have in your daily life. Our perspective in Latin America is completely different than the perspective in Europe and in the US. I think these payment issues are a big issue, and considering your proposal of this metadata and linking directly to the musician or to the author, I think this is a topic we have to think about. How easy it is to buy something online, and how much it costs to me if I have to pay $1 or $2 for a song or whatever, and how much it costs to me to have a credit card. In Latin America, that is not obvious. That is not as simple as in Europe. And I think this is a perspective we have to pay attention to.
Do we have some more immediate reaction desires? David, do you want to react?
Lots of notes.
Okay, maybe not lots, but a few points. Welcome.
I'll make a few points. So I'll expand a little bit on what Jim said about the value of digitally created content and this opportunity we have now to attach information during the creation and distribution process. It's something we never had before. So while they're actually in the studio, somebody could be listing all of the studio musicians, the name of the producer, the engineer, the mixer, who mastered the musical work. And nowadays, people like music producers have become anonymous in the music world, because in the old days, you would get a CD and it would be clearly printed who produced it, who the engineers were, and so on. And now, in the digital age, none of that information is readily available. So it's important both to the creators and to the real serious fans to know these kind of things. The date of recording, as you said, geolocation, where it was recorded, all of those things would be fabulous. I do have a concern that the metadata, if it's attached to a song, has to be done securely. Because the first thing I would do, if I was a nefarious hacker type, is I would replace the link to Dr. Dre's website to my Dr. Dre website, where I sell commercials, or maybe just distribute malware, or collect credit card numbers, or whatever. So first of all, it would have to be secure, or it would be heavily abused very quickly. The next thing that we could put in the metadata is to add a copy, a Creative Commons style rights information in the music. So if I record a song and I want to say, anybody can use this, but you can't remix my song, and you must give me attribution. There's no charge. You can use a video or something, but you can't chop my song up, and you can't make it your own, for example. I'm a big fan of that. I would like to see it go even further, to use some kind of metadata standard like ACAP, which was developed by the European newspapers, which say, you can use this with attribution, and you can use the first paragraph with no payment. But if you want to use my whole article, then you have to get it from me, or send them to my website. And so these kind of intention, maybe not even enforceable, but just the intention of the content creator can be embedded in the metadata. I think that could be very useful and encourage people to distribute their things more widely.
Just one moment, please, Jim. There's so much of value in what David said to continue our discussion in all kinds of directions. I will certainly call on you, Jim, but first I want Jillian, to give Jillian the opportunity to jump in on the human rights perspective. Is there something to worry about or not? If all this metadata gets attached to a music file, is there reason to fear about abuse, like a music recording or recording of a political statement? It's technically the same kind of file. Is there something to worry about there?
That's a really hard question to answer. I think that I need more context to be able to delve into that. I mean, this is not something I've ever worked on before, so to think about, yeah, I really need more context for that question. It's not my area of expertise.
Okay, I think that's a good answer, actually. So we need to get the technical people to flesh out some context of ideas and then run those ideas through the human rights people who can give us an educated information. Nobody really knows in advance, but if we pass it through the people who deal with the human rights problems that exist, they can tell us certainly more than we as technical people know. Okay, now Jim, please go ahead.
Yeah, I would just sort of say a couple of things. Just on what Dave was saying, I think it's not just new material also that's being generated that you could attach metadata to. I think there's a tremendous opportunity to monetize and enhance stuff that's gone before. So there's a huge interest, certainly in my age group, between people like Neil Young, Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young, and people are very, people like the Beatles, people are very interested in finding out where the record was made, who the producer was, what equipment they used. So retrospectively, you can then attach metadata to information that was all previously created. So there's a huge burgeoning marketplace for that for someone to take advantage of. Then the other thing I was going to say, there's also one of the things you can do with metadata is you can take care of cultural sensitivities and regional sensitivities. So one of the areas that metadata can help describe, certainly when we're looking at this in terms of the movie area as well, is parental guidance, parental control, and it's clear that as you go across the world, there are very different sensitivities within that. And so what you can do, if you could describe actually what's happening in a movie or a piece of music, you can then apply the various different filters to that, because something that's allowed in the UK might not be allowed in parts of the Middle East, for example. So there's ways whereby you can actually utilize metadata to improve the experience and retain the cultural sensitivities.
I could respond to that.
Okay, good. Julian, please go ahead.
Sure. So that's actually a great example for where I might have concerns from the human rights perspective. So a few weeks ago, some of you might be familiar with this offensive video on YouTube that resulted in some countries blocking YouTube, other countries issuing court orders to Google to block YouTube, and then also Google chose in 2 countries to just block it of their own volition. And this is something that happens all the time, whereby a company such as Google or Facebook might geolocationally or IP block a certain content because they decide that, this is too sensitive for people in Pakistan, but it's not against our terms of service, so we're going to do it that way. And my question to you would be, who makes the decision on that metadata? Are we talking about a government issuing an order to say, no, you need to put metadata on this content because it's offensive to my country's people? Or are we talking about a content provider who thinks, oh, those poor Pakistanis, they can't handle that information, let's put metadata on there that prevents them from seeing it? I think that that's where my concern would come in, and I understand the youth question. I don't like it necessarily, and being one of those youth that snuck into the R-rated movies when I was young, but nonetheless, we do have certain obligations to protect minors, children. But when it comes to adults, I really question who would be in charge of making those decisions.
Who wants to go next? Please go ahead.
I think that what Jim is saying is that in the case of a motion picture, which is the easiest example, if there was detailed information, there's certain kind of drug consumption, and there's frontal nudity, and there's certain language, and so on, and if this was all done in a table, it could be automatically filtered. It's not like if it wasn't there, it would likely get through. But again, I think not enabling the technology so that it can slip through the local authorities is probably not the practical approach in the long term, because they will not have a problem over blocking. They're not going to have a problem over blocking. So you might as well let them block what they want to block and let everything else go through.
Okay.
I was just going to say, and my reference really was the movies today. So, for example, you can have one movie that's rated a 12 in the UK and it's rated a 15 in Ireland, because Ireland is slightly stricter in terms of the cultural thing. So when it comes to actually, we've been doing a lot of work. Microsoft done a lot of work in terms of games consoles and how you actually rate different movies and different games in terms of the games console and stuff like that. And so we've developed quite a sophisticated system along with partners in the entertainment industry called PEGI, which allows for determination in terms of a community to rate what the guidance characteristics are for different content. So that's the context I was looking at. I wasn't looking at a wider geopolitical context.
If it's okay, Norbert, I'm going to take a little slightly different direction. So another thing that we talked about was this concept of sharing and free sharing. And everybody uses it in a different term. I mean, for me, I had to watch 2/3 of my friends who are music industry employees and musicians lose their livelihood over the past dozen years. It's a painful thing to see because their stuff was being shared and they were not getting paid for their work. But if we do the metadata properly, we can do things like, as Jim said, sharing across platforms. So if I buy a song from iTunes, for example, there maybe in the metadata there is a number, like in the music industry we use the ISRC, which is an ISO standard number, very much like the ISBN in a book. If you can create a playlist with all of the ISRCs, I can send it to Jim and he can open that in Spotify and hit play and get all of the same songs, and we weren't forced to go to an illegal source. We were able to share freely what we wanted across platforms, but in a legal context. And I think that's another thing that metadata can enable, and actually the music industry is just finishing a standard for playlist sharing across platforms.
Okay, Jim?
Yeah, so I was just going to say, this isn't just something that's particular to the music industry as well. I mean, Dave mentioned the publishing industry in ECAP proposal as well. Some of the things that people have been looking at and looking at the structures have been developed for ultraviolet are things like the medical and health industry as well, because what you've got in that, if you get an MRI scan, if it's done on one machine, it isn't necessarily readable in another machine. So that whole industry is looking to say, you've got a digital file that's got certain characteristics, it's got metadata associated with it. How do you make sure that if you end up in someone else's surgery and they don't happen to have that machine, that when they send the information across, they can actually decode it and be able to improve your health or fix whatever is wrong with you. So this isn't just something that's so what's happening is the entertainment industry, I think, is taking a lead in some of these things and developing techniques for sharing information in a secure way that makes sense for the individual and the ecosystem. And some of the things that's been driven by the entertainment industry could well be taken up by other industries as well.
Okay, I think we see that the industry, both the entertainment industry and other branches of the industry, they are actually pushing ahead, doing a lot of things to enable the kind of metadata use that works, hopefully, for them. Now my question is, what can the free culture movement do to somehow also get those aspects of metadata implemented, used, that would be of interest to the, I don't want to say the free half of the world, so just let me say in the area of people who want things to be shared freely, who perhaps also want to be able to share music without some central vendor knowing exactly what number of what specific song was shared. Perhaps it has a politically sensitive content. I want to share it without the server of the music industry, which may be subject to some government surveillance, knowing which song exactly I'm sharing. So my question to all our panelists is, what can the free or freedom-oriented or just not part of the industry, part of the world, do to get that kind of metadata into real effective standards, into products that go out into the market from commercial software businesses? What could we do to get this kind of things that we might be interested in out there? So I will start again at the left, and so please go ahead, Beatrice.
Thank you, Norbert. I think what is on the table right now is a problem with DRMs, with the digital restrictions management, and the possibility of a vendor to have a tremendous amount of data we don't want them to have. For example, I don't want everybody knowing what books I read or what songs I hear. And this might sound like not a problem, but I can remember last dictatorship in Argentina, and I remember a list of songs that were forbidden. So listening to some kind of music was something like a crime in Argentina during the dictatorship. So it is an issue, the anonymity on our cultural access. So I don't want a book vendor to have a list of which books I'm reading, when am I reading them. Also, privacy is also an issue here. So we have to take care of this. The other thing, I am always scared of concentration. Every time I see a big concentrated player in a field, I start getting some uncomfortable. So I think decentralization, promoting free platforms and promoting other small and medium businesses is one of our chances to get a solution to these issues. So I think we have to promote anonymity in our cultural access. So I don't want Amazon, for example, to have a list of what I read. I don't want that. So, but if I want to buy something, I have to go through them. I still value buying a book or listening to a song in an anonymous way, and I will defend that. And I think we have to defend that.
Thank you. David looks like he wants to say something.
I hate to say always, but most often, yes. I appreciate Beatrice's concerns. We might not see eye to eye on everything, but in the case of privacy, and her country has a documented history of this, and it could very well happen again. And I don't know the answer. I mean, the answer now is pay cash and buy the book physically. That's the answer. But the long-term answer, I honestly don't know what it is. Perhaps the monetary exchange is separated from the receipt of the file or something. So you're buying credits somewhere and moving them, and they don't know. And I think it's technically solvable, but not an easy problem. Norbert's question was, what can be done? I can't remember the exact wording, but the answer to the question was, I believe that one thing we can do is to respect the content creator's intention for the consumption of the content they created. So if I create a protest song, and in the secure metadata I attach Creative Commons rules and say freely distribute it, don't attribute it to me, attribute it to anonymous or whatever, then if the content creator's intentions are respected, I think we're halfway there. It doesn't solve the problem of a commercially recorded song, for example, that becomes a theme for a protest song, and that gets into an area that is more complicated. But I think that in many cases, if you record something and you want it to be shared freely, you should have a way to indicate that and people should respect your rights. And if it doesn't say that, then you can do that.
Just one moment, Jim, please. Was there something from a remote participant? You lifted your finger? Can we, or if you want, you can just come to the front. We have microphones here. Microphone is not working yet.
We have a question from this group of people. They ask you, other country stole our national music from internet and on television. How can we solve this problem, or how do you solve this problems like that? For example, they stole our music and tell that it's our national music. Can we still solve this problem?
This is a question that is not quite directed to the current train of thought. So maybe I go to Jim, who wanted to say something in response to David, and then we come to this question from the remote participant.
Yeah, so to David's point, I was just going to say that, also David's point, I think there's a danger that some of the techniques that are being developed today allow sharing in a much greater sense. So and to respect the creative person's rights, I think, is paramount in this. And the creative person's rights, they can use DRM to have zero cost and shared with everybody, or they can have DRM to charge £10 a track. It's up to them to what to do it. So I think one of the things is that sometimes in this arena the technology is somehow castigated as being bad, and I think we need to kind of, as technology is evolving so quickly, the creative people really need to get a hold of the technology and understand the technology and see how they can use it to best effect, to give whatever effect that they want to give to the marketplace. And so I would just encourage, I think sometimes there's a schism between people who are creative and people who are technical. And so I think it would be, I think the smart artists these days are able to utilize the technology to great effect. And you've seen there's a number of different artists around today, certainly in the music sphere, that can utilize technology to great effect. So that was my point.
Okay, thank you. Now let's get to the question from the remote participant, because we really want to do what we can to include them. Do we have some thoughts here on the panel that might address this question?
So we have to try to clarify what the question was. So there's two possibilities. One is that there's music recorded in country A. It is then stolen from the marketplace and distributed freely in a separate country. So even the copyright law of the first country has no authority in the second country. Is this the question? Right. Okay. So in the physical world, the analogy is that you would be making CDs and DVDs and so on. You fill up a container and you ship it to another country. And in the physical world, we have pretty good laws to deal with that. They impound the container at the port and so on and so forth. On the internet, we don't have that. So it's going to depend on a collaboration between governments. In this case, I don't see any other solution unless the government on the sending end is willing to impose on the network operators some kind of filter to stop that from going out of the country, which both for technical, economic, and probably political reasons, I don't think would ever happen. So I'm not sure there's an easy answer to the question, if I understood the question.
Do we have have some more thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, I have to agree there. I think that it's actually virtually impossible. I was flying an airline to Baku that I won't name, but this particular national airline had screens on the backs of the seats, and you could select the film that you wanted to watch. I selected a TV show. It was an American TV show, and I was watching it, and I noticed that in the corner of the screen there was a little logo from a television channel. So basically this airline had taken television right off the TV, stolen it, and put it on the back screen. I've never seen anything like that before. So when you've got governments that won't respect it, then how do you, and maybe it's the airline, maybe it's the government, but then how do you even think about that? And I think that actually goes back to something that Beatrice said no, David said, sorry, respecting the content creator's intentions. I absolutely agree with that, but you know, I'm reminded also of my own country, the US, where we had issues where the candidate Romney was using a song without permission, and the artist was saying, no, you can't use my music. And so when you even have a presidential candidate doing it, how do you solve the problem when the highest levels don't respect the idea either? And so I think that kind of goes to both questions, and I would just say that I absolutely agree. I think that respecting the content creator is vital, and I think that one of the things that we're not thinking about enough in this is those middle ground creators, not the big ones, not the really famous ones, not Beyonce, but the independent filmmakers, the independent musicians who do need to make money, but who also in many cases, such as, you know, Louis C.K. or there are other artists I can think of, want to share. And so I think that these ideas around metadata are, I think they have the potential to empower the artist.
Maybe I quickly jump in here to mention that what actually got this panel started was a discussion that I had with a musician, a jazz musician who is just starting, trying to become a professional, and he was interested in this kind of thing. So maybe we can have a quick round of discussing what will work for the musician who isn't a big name, who isn't a big enough name to get any record company interested in him yet. What can he do?
To clarify the scenario, so we talk about this jazz musician. I don't think the question is how big or small the artist is. I think the real question is the artist expecting to get money for the consumption of the sound recording they made, or do they have another intention to give it away, to use it to promote their shampoo or their perfume or their jeans or whatever, or just to share with people because they have enough money now, they're rich, and just have my music for free? But I think it really comes down to, did the content creator hope to get money back or not? And this is an area where a version of an expanded Creative Commons can answer a lot of those questions, my opinion. Not Creative Commons as it is now, because it only covers the half that are willing to give it away.
Yeah, I'd just like to tack on to that and say that I think that I think we should probably answer the question with the assumption that the person wants to make money, but I think we should also think about this to move the dialogue forward from the perspective that even though the person wants to make money, let's say, for example, that they're not invested in the traditional system.
This assumption is absolutely correct. For that particular person, he wants to make money, but he is totally open to make it in ways that have nothing to do with selling music files.
Exactly, and I would like to add, first, there's a lot of people using Creative Commons that are willing to make money, and that is true for a lot of people using the licenses. But I want to, maybe something that is a little bit provocative, but I would like to put on the table, if we, because you are mentioning that we have to respect the author, the authors and the musicians willing and his right to say what he or she wants to be done with the music, but doesn't that need a limitation also? could an author said, okay, I want just say what they want on their music, and just that would be, if and where are the limits? Could the widow of an artist decide, even to the contrary of what he would decide in their living after his death? Who's making the decision? And so, where are the limits? So also the wish of what the author said has a limitation, and it has to be that way, because culture is not like apples or like other physical stuff. Culture is a completely different thing. And I would like to answer the question from the audience in terms of that there is international regulation that already answers the question of something brought from one country to the other. In Argentina, for example, the collecting society for musicians is collecting money for every music, not just from the music from Argentina. So if that music is brought to Argentina, you have to go to SADAIC, which is the collecting society, because they are making money from that in a legal way. So it is something that is already solving the international agreements. And I want to keep an eye on the limitations to copyright and the limitation to authors' will, because they have to have a limitation on time, on what they can prohibit. I think, for example, an author cannot say that a library should not lend the book. That is legal. That is a limitation to what an author could decide on their books, for example. And there's a lot more limitations and exceptions that need to be addressed. We have to pay attention to those limits in order to grant access and participation in culture, because Article 15, already mentioned in this panel, it has three parts: access, participation, and the rights of the authors. And we have to balance these three rights, and we have to balance them, not just pay attention to what an author wants.
Well, I guess one comment I would make is that a lot of people speak about Creative Commons as an alternative to copyright law. It is not. It is completely dependent upon copyright law. And if the copyright law in your country says you must provide, you have no legal way of stopping a library from making your music available, then you have no legal way. Then there's no discussion. If that's what the law says, you apply. You know, if the law said it's up to the artist, and you don't like that law, then you should lobby to have the law changed. So, the other point you made about, for example, the artist, and then the artist is deceased, and maybe their spouse now controls the rights. They control the rights. It's standard copyright law. If they want to, when the singer was alive, they said give it away for free, and they die, and the spouse now controls the copyright, and they say no. You know what? I used to live from the money that my husband brought home from touring. He's dead. He doesn't tour. The only way I can get money is from the sale of his music, so I want money. That's their legal right. They should be able to do that. And the argument of access to culture should never override the right of the creator, in my opinion.
It happens to be the exact time when we're supposed to stop. So if there is some urgent intervention, we can excuse that by the fact that we have had to start a bit late. But if it is not the case, then I would like to really thank our panelists for the discussion. We have had some very good contributions to the discussion, very illuminating. We have also had illuminating omissions from the discussion. You can often learn a lot about a person's or perspective, how it relates to a topic by what they are not interested in and not responding to in detail. So I appreciate and thank our panelists also for the silence they have provided on some topics. And I end the workshop with that. Particular thanks also to our remote participant who spoke up. That's very good. We need to see more of this at the IGF. Thank everyone.